Good evening and welcome to the return edition of WrestleTalkShow. I'm your host, Joshua Zimnmerman, and it's great to be back, folks. We'd like to thank our YouTube following who stayed with us. You'll notice in the last couple of days I've made some Facebook postings. I know we've been delayed. I know we've gotten backed up. We do apologize for that. This is my busiest time right now between work and everything else. It was not because I lost devotion. It was not because there was nothing to say. There have been plenty to say. And go figure, tonight when I logged into YouTube, they informed me that my account is now, I guess it was a probationary period. It's off its probationary period, and I'm allowed to post videos longer than 20 minutes or 15 minutes. So booyah, here we go. This one's going to be pretty quick as we're gathering information for the last couple of weeks. For what we've been behind, we're going to bring back some subject videos rather than recap everything that we've missed. We'll find some topics. And the one thing that I did tonight that I'm glad I did was I watched via Netflix. I watched an independent documentary while looking for Beyond the Mat. I wanted to rewatch that essentially, ideally, but tripped over something called The Backyard, and it's one documentator's outlook on the backyard circuit and how it goes from backyard to independent to essentially pro. The Bow brothers were featured, who were tough enough two competitors, rather, etc., etc. I didn't take notes because I didn't feel I had to. I'm doing this video literally right after watching it, so it's still fresh on the mind. How to say this without... Well, first, let's review The Backyard, so to speak. Showcased by RVD's inserts. He admits that it's gone a little extreme, that some promotions have taken it further than its intention. Its intention was just wrestling with the backyard, in the backyard, with makeshift rings and whatnot, not necessarily that it had to go ECW style, or some would argue above that. I would argue above that in some cases. Most things I've seen in ECW look safer. Here's my thought. My thought is, on this DVD, they make a valid argument. They do. I understand that backyard wrestling isn't accepted by the wrestling community and all that, and I sort of concur, but after seeing this video, I also sort of find myself, maybe they need to smarten up, but their approach, it's unique. The only argument I have with your guys' approach, and I'm speaking to the documenter and the people who made that video, I'll tag the shit out of this intentionally so they can't miss it, but their hopes are to become pro wrestlers through the backyard, that they're following in the footsteps of everyone that they've talked to that are now pro, who said it all started in the backyard. My argument with that is that I don't think that when these pros that this generation is following were doing the backyard, that it was that pretense. I think it was wrestling within the backyard on a makeshift ring. And some of them are pretty good. Some of them are really good. The rings look all right, even though they're not professionally made. They have decent rings. A lot of them like to use violence. It's part of the culture. Some of them associate it that it's not backyard unless it's extreme. That's one point that I argue. I like the approach of over in England. There's a MPW, I believe they pronounce it, and a couple others within the states that they want to do it on a technical level. They're not too keen on the hurting or the bleeding or the injuries that may occur. Rather, they don't have the financials for the school itself, so they sit there and they train 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 until they learn the move. Now, some would argue you don't know the move unless you go through training. But whether you're paying the guy or you're doing it repetitiously, isn't it all training? I sort of see the argument there. Some promotions, or some wrestlers and promotions that were highlighted in that movie, that documentary, I think have a misconception of how it's supposed to go. A lot of them get that it's about the overall show, and those are the ones that don't hurt each other, where you see that it's not about the show or the promotions, HIW, just to name one blatantly, where if it's not extreme, it's not accepted. But one thing, the biggest thing maybe that sticks out about this movie is what one guy said in the UK, who those guys, go figure, the perfectionists of everything, want to learn the technical level and aren't worried about hurting their friends. But one of the wrestlers there made a good comment. He said, how can you say you're friends and then want to hurt that person or want to scar that person? Their end game is that everybody walks away the same and they have a match they can talk about, that it's for the love of the show. Where you don't see for the love of the show is when companies such as HIW and all that say, this is for us. If you love wrestling, the overall conception is usually that you want to entertain. If this is just about you and that's what you're sticking to, then why would you yourself want to physically mutilate yourself? Some of them don't. I mean, watching that, like I said, watching the video put it into new perspective to where like I said in the beginning, I see the argument where it's not approved. I don't see WWE scouting these backyards. So they have no choice but to go from backyard to independent. But where I think the approach is confused, or confusing, insert word here, is that by hurting yourself or blading or whatever they do in the extreme cases, that's going to help you make it. I think that there's a better argument to be made that, like, again, over in the UK, where if you learn the move repetitiously, you can be a professional at it because you know what you're doing. And a lot of them just want to get out of, they don't have it right now to go to wrestling school. Now, 90% of them did say that the end game is to go to the school, get into an independent circuit, go to the school, get paid a little better, get trained, and then eventually wind up one of Vince's bitches. But haven't we established that Vince doesn't know what to do with the wrestlers he has now? Now, granted, this movie was extremely old. Excerpts from 2002 to 2004, etc., etc. But, and call me late to the party if you will, I think it's safe to conclude it like this. Some of them have a great approach. They do. They want to learn the moves. They want to be as safe as possible. And they want to put on an overall good show. And they understand that it's two people working together to put on the best show. Where the misconception seems to be is the other ones like HIW, where the more you inflict, the more ooze you get, boosts that promotion. That might be true. But then when you get to a professional, like, and now I know I'm reaching here, but I'll use both companies since we've used them in the past as guinea pigs. They should get their credit where credit's due. If you start down this road of extreme wrestling and you're beaten and broken before you get to the WWE, you walk into Vince's office or a scouter's office, and the scouter looks at you and you've already been through hell and back. How much more can you give? How much of a viable asset are you if you've already spent 10, 15 years trying to break into this business just to get turned down because you don't have today's look, or you're too beaten up, or because that's not the end game. Yeah, they played in professional wrestling. There's light bulbs every now and again. ECW is great for it. WWE every once in a while, not lately, but years back, was good for it. But I just think overall, it's a means to entertain yourself before you go to the school and train. But again, my argument, going back to that, my argument is that if I'm the promoter and they come to me from wherever, what after they've been on the backyard circuit, and I look at this wrestler and he's all beaten up over the last 10 years of wrestling, and he's broken and he's been through hell, how much more can he offer you before you have to cut him anyway? And that's my only thing. WWE is not scouting the backyards. They're scouting the independents, and the independents that mean something. So the argument is if they're broken by the time they get to the pros, how much work can they do for the pros? Because I encourage you to watch it. It's called The Backyard, and it stars The Lizard and Rob Van Dam. The Lizard is an independent, and Rob Van Dam is, as you know, the whole effing show. Little bit of tidbits while we're bouncing back and forth. Jeff Hardy's drug trial has been pushed again into the new year. How many breaks is this guy going to get? Me or you do something like this and we're thrown in jail or put on probation for a year and randomly piss test for an entire year. And if we foul up, we go to jail. But if you're Jeff Hardy and you're associated with TNA Wrestling and your name's well known and you have the money to pay for the lawyer and everything that's going on, then you can await your trial outside while making all your money for TNA. Your life is not interrupted. You have to show to court once every couple of months if your lawyer can't do it for you, which is most of the time the defendant only has to show up for the formal things. Once you retain a lawyer, he can take over most of that. But the argument isn't that. It's how many breaks is this guy going to get? And doesn't anyone see from the video I posted last month, his little drug-induced rant, that he's not getting better? He's not using this time to say, hey, I'm in trouble. There's a thing called the internet, and maybe I might want to not be fucked up when I'm on the camera, because this could come back and bite me. This is PR I don't have to be doing, so I'll stay away from it and just focus on my wrestling, which I could always improve on. No, instead, you have a situation where he's just allowed to rant about everything. I don't think he was I don't believe everything about what he said about CM Punk. I could be wrong. But I just think at this point he doesn't care, and I think it's an unfair precedence to set that John Q. Public is fucked if we ever do this. But if you're Jeff Hardy and you're well known to the wrestling community and you're well connected with TNA and you can pay the lawyers